from screen to shelf.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of From Screen to Shelf, hosted by myself and the wonderful, magnificent Will. We have exciting stuff for you today. We've really been liking, Will and I haven't done it, Gabe and I have done too, but we've really been liking, or at least I have. Will's about to find out if he likes it. I'm assuming he's going to. But we're going to be ranking the Evil Dead movies. I know I'm pretty diehard. I think, Will, you and I agree that for the most part, Evil Dead is up there with Scream as a flawless franchise, right? In the horror genre.
Yeah, I'd say overall, I mean, I apologize. It's my dehumidifier that just turned on. I'll shut that off in a second. But
no, you're good.
If I sound okay, I'll keep going.
Yeah, you're good. No issue.
Oh, there we go. You got to love that timer.
Pizza in the oven, man. That's what
I got it on a timer, so it turns off. Yeah, I'd say Evil Dead as far as Scream. It's I don't want to say it's my favorite franchise. Scream is probably the most consistent overall, but I mean, we got to give shout out to Evil Dead as well for that, because even though there's less installments with Evil Dead, you know, it will soon be. I'm pretty sure there's another film coming in the near future.
Yes.
We can get into that maybe a little later, but so far it's pretty solid, man. Even from, you know, spanning the films that are out and as well as the TV series, it's pretty all around. It's been well received by both audiences and critics, and I think it's one of the few horror franchises that is near perfect, if I may. In fact, it might be even more consistent than Scream, you know, and I'll say this because not everyone enjoyed the more recent Scream films. I think overall, I think they're solid movies. I think they got generally, you know, good reception from fans, but you know, you still have people that love the original trilogy with Scream. You know, there's even people out there that aren't fans of Scream 4, right? So, although I personally believe Scream is pretty consistent, you know, it's not necessarily a majority consensus, so to speak. But I think with Evil Dead is one of the strongest cases of that. So hopefully that trend continues. You know, I just think Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell, who's also executive producing the movies at this point, they're kind of really steering this franchise in the direction they want it to go in by selecting the directors that are getting involved. So, you know, they made a good choice with Fede Alvarez with the 2013 remake. And you're going to have to help me out. I don't remember who directed Evil Dead Rise, but, you know, for the most part, Evil Dead Rise is a pretty solid movie. We're going to get into all of them and talk about them and give you guys our thoughts while we go through this ranking. But yeah, I'd say Evil Dead is one of the most consistent horror franchises out there. And it's definitely up there with Scream. And in fact, it might surpass Scream in terms of overall quality. From installment to installment. So,
and it's a pretty good bar as well, because the biggest difference in you can actually kind of look at them as one and the same, right? Because each Scream tackles something different, right? And that can be the same exact way for each Evil Dead. There is an Evil Dead movie for everybody. Every single one of them is completely different from the other one. None of them copy it. As an example, first one it has some goofy moments, but it's not considered a comedy. It's a horror movie, a very early horror movie. Then you have Evil Dead 2, that is a horror comedy with a lot more emphasis on the comedy. Then you get Army of Darkness, that really isn't a horror at all. It's just a slapstick humor. Then you get Evil Dead 2013, that genuinely, to me, is one of the most terrifying movies of all time. That movie is terrifying. That movie just goes crazy. Then you have the TV show, which is I think a perfect blend of everything. And then Evil Dead Rise, which had some comedic elements to it, but I think it was just It was a little bit different from Evil Dead 2013, but still had the same spirit while keeping the camp, is kind of how
Yeah.
I felt for Evil Dead Rise. And of course, we're going to break these movies down. We're going to talk about them. We're going to rank them. We're going to do this how Gabe and I do it, where we're going to agree, which I don't think will be hard for me and you to agree on most of these, because we've
Yeah.
talked about these movies in length a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really do think that it's literally such a perfect comparison that you're making with Scream, because they're one and the same. If there's a Scream for everybody out there, and there's an
Yeah.
Evil Dead, I genuinely feel that's for out there for anybody that can. I mean, Army of Darkness doesn't have hard to stomach things. I don't think. I don't at least recall it. It's my least rewatched. Not saying
Yeah,
I don't like it, but
Army of Darkness is almost more like, and yeah, like with the horror elements, like they're definitely
yeah,
present there at times,
yeah,
but it definitely is more like, it's definitely more like an action adventure horror
yeah,
film. I
like
would
Swords
even
and
call it, I
Sandals.
mean, there's like science fiction, there's sci-fi elements
Yeah,
in there as well. So it's more
yeah,
of like an action adventure sci-fi horror film.
right.
And you have the comedy elements in there as well. I mean, I think it's a fantastic genre film though. I mean, you can kind of break
Agreed.
that movie down into multiple subgenres, if you really wanted to. Um which is, that Army of Darkness is just so unique. But I think that's the cool thing about Evil Dead specifically, is that with Scream, and I don't want to compare the two franchises, but we talked about Scream at the beginning, so
Right.
I guess we can just kind of go by that metric. But like you said, Scream, there's a movie for everybody. Like if you just like the original, you have that. You have the two sequels, from the late '90s, early 2000s. Then you have Scream 4, which was kind of like introducing a new generation, and now you have 5 and 6 with a new cast
Yeah.
of characters, so to speak. And then you have the return of Sydney and these other legacy characters that we've come to know and love. But
Yeah.
I think with Scream, the only thing that Scream suffers from is, I guess you could say, like trying. You don't want to go too far with the plot in terms of trying to overcomplicate it with, who did it,
Right.
and trying
Right.
to
Right.
get to the bottom of it. I think that's the only thing that could potentially hurt Scream in the long run, is how many
Yeah.
times you're going to reinvent that wheel. I just think Evil Dead, it's a lot easier to make a new movie and kind
A
of
lot
keep
more to
that
play
simple
with.
premise and
Yeah.
kind of reinvent it and show it in different ways, like they did with Evil Dead Rise, right? It's the same premise we've come to know with,
Right.
somebody, reading pages from the Necronomicon and, summoning the evil, but instead of a cabin, with Evil Dead Rise, it was in a fucking skyrise, which was cool. That
Yeah.
was a new setting. It was unique. They were able to do some really interesting gags with that, like with the elevator and stuff like that. And
Hmm.
we'll get more into that. I don't want to go too deep into it right now. But yeah, I just think Evil Dead, there's a lot more that you can do with it creatively, in my opinion, while maintaining the simple premise that each movie has had in the franchise, right? So
Yeah.
I think Evil Dead has a lot more going forward in that regard, in terms of maintaining originality with each installment and separating them from the respective others. Whereas with Scream, that can get more complicated, I think, at this point. And well, we don't know what's gonna happen with Scream. That's a topic for another episode than we
Yep.
did touch on a couple months back. But we kind of talked about where Scream is as a franchise with the recent developments regarding the seventh movie,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So all that's up in the air now as far as the next installment and what they're going to do with that. So that's
Yeah.
that remains to be seen. But I think so far, Evil Dead, man, is it's been going strong since its inception, and I think it has a lot to do with Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell. Having the creative control that they have as far as which directors they want to get involved, and making sure that the people they bring on to their projects, they share their vision for, where they want the franchise to go. But we're
Yeah.
going to get into that because, the most recent installment did some things that we haven't seen before in an Evil
Hmm.
Dead movie. And you guys are going to find out whether or not Chase or I thought that worked or not.
Yeah.
So we'll get into that. But yeah, dude, I'm ready to fucking break this
Open
down
up.
and
Yeah.
get
Go ahead and
into the
open up
nitty
with
gritty.
the original. Go ahead and start us off with that. Give us the Will
So
thoughts.
yeah, so my thoughts on the original. So I'm trying to remember which movie I saw first. I don't know if it was one or two, Dead by
Hmm.
Dawn, and we'll talk about Dead by Dawn. But we'll start with one. The original is, I mean, it's a classic. You can't deny, you know, what it did for horror at the time. It was something new. I mean, even the camera techniques that were used, you know, like they were talking about putting cameras on 2x4s and kind of running them through the woods to give you that effect that it was swooping through the trees, through the forest, you know, the evil, you know, trying to find a vessel to inhabit. You know, that was all really cool, dude. And the sound effects and all that. That was, again, that was something that was just so different at the time. And you know, I've seen interviews with Raimi and Campbell about how they raised money for this movie. You know, it was just so funny that they'd get these like high profile like doctors and dentists and real estate brokers together in a room, and it's like, yeah, you know, we want you guys to invest in our movie, and then it's just really funny that they have all these prestigious people, like proper people in that room, and then it's just like, what are we gonna watch? It's this thing called Evil Dead. You know, like it's just funny
For sure.
So I always remember that story. But no, I mean, again, it's low budget guerrilla horror filmmaking at its finest. I think it's a movie that, although it's not my personal favorite in the franchise, can't be ignored for what it did for the horror community and horror movies in general. And yeah, I mean, dude, there's, you know, everything from, I don't want to say the word on the video here because I don't want us to get flagged or taken down, but the what can we say? The tree grapes.
Yeah.
That
The
whole
tree
scene.
Yeah.
The tree scene.
Yeah.
You know, we could just say grapes, right?
Yeah. Right.
GRAPES.
Yeah.
Grapes, like the
Yeah.
fruit that you
Yeah.
eat that's juicy
That'll be a
and
good way to
refreshing.
cover it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, the tree scene is still very shocking
And
and
unsettling.
uncomfortable to watch.
Yeah.
And again, for its time, you know, to show that in film is very just uncompromising, you know, to a degree. Still uncomfortable to watch to this day. So obviously has lasting impact, you know, with the context of the rest of the story. But yeah, I mean, some people look back at Evil Dead and say, yeah, some of the effects look kind of cheesy.
Yeah, they definitely do.
And they definitely do. I agree
Yeah.
with that wholeheartedly. But at the same time, I keep the budget in mind as well. Because to me, Evil Dead is like the movie that you make with your friends and just
Yeah.
have so much fun doing. And that's where I think the fun comes from. It
Yeah.
does have some pretty creepy moments in it, which again, in some of the special effects makeup, I think is fantastic.
Like with his girlfriend, the way she
Yeah,
laughs and
like,
cackles and stares at him is creepy,
oh,
man.
it's so well
Still
done.
creepy. Yeah.
It's so well done. And we'll get into, and we can get into this in a moment, but I think one of the best characters in that movie is Cheryl. Speaking of the tree scene, you know, she's the first one to be violated by the evil. And her character, once she's possessed, once she becomes a Deadite, I think is this one of the scariest looking characters. Like just in the basement with
Yeah.
the door, you know, and
Yeah.
the chains like that. That
Classic scene.
scared the hell out
Iconic.
of me. Like
Yeah.
iconic imagery, and just so like that original shot of her like peeking through from the basement is still creepy. Like I just got a chill. Like, there's just
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
about it, man, that's
Yeah.
just scary with like the white eyes, you know.
Yeah.
That is horrifying, you know, just really, really creepy, really well done. So yeah, Evil Dead for me, not my favorite in the franchise, but still a really, really beloved movie. And one that I've had, you know, regarding physical media, I mean, dude, I've had so many fucking editions of that movie.
Yeah.
Like,
Same. I have like 2 Blu-ray steelbooks, man.
like Blu-ray, dude. I'm going
Yeah.
back to like the DVD, even like all the like back in the day, like my dad used to buy us like the Anchor Bay when Anchor Bay
Yeah.
was still putting out DVDs. Like Anchor Bay had so many fucking Evil Dead DVDs. It was ridiculous how many
Yeah.
versions of that movie. Like I feel like it's just like, oh, okay, we got nothing else to put out in our catalog. Let's just re-release Evil Dead for like
Yeah.
the 17th time with like a special edition. They
Yeah.
had so many editions of that fucking movie, dude.
Yeah.
Most of which I've gotten rid of at this point. I still have a few gems like lying around here and there, you know, that I held on to, luckily. But yeah, I mean, Evil Dead was. I think that's the movie that I've owned the most copies of, surprisingly. Out of everything that I've ever owned in regards to physical media, it's been Evil Dead. You know, probably thanks to my dad and Anchor Bay
Fair
for
enough.
releasing so many of them. But yeah, I think fantastic movie. I think the special effects for the time were, although some of them are cheesy, they don't necessarily hold up the best. You got to keep in mind the budget they were working with and the conditions they made this film under. So I think it's still pretty damn good, man. Like I think it's a classic movie. I love the original artwork. That original artwork,
Iconic.
like the blue poster,
It's up there
probably
with Texas
my
Chainsaw for me as one of the greatest
yeah.
posters.
It's I was gonna say it's up there. It's got that kind of aesthetic to it as well. Um, and I used to have a shirt like way back in the day, like middle school. So this is like 15 years ago, almost 20 years ago now, with Cheryl's character on it once she became possessed, when she has like the bar in her hand.
Yeah.
And dude, it was such a cool shirt, and I have not been able to find a shirt that has been similar to it. But it's got her character. It just says it had big blue words, Evil Dead on the top. Then underneath was her face possessed with the bar, and then just fog around her. Like the coolest fucking shirt, dude. And I used to wear that all the time.
That sounds sick,
So
bro.
Evil Dead, again, not my favorite by any means in the franchise, but it's definitely up there. I don't want to give. We'll do our thoughts, and then we'll rank it. Right? Is that how we want to do this?
Yeah, that
So
sounds
that's
good.
kind of where I stand. But yeah, I mean, as far as Ash too, like an introduction to Bruce Campbell, like it's just cool, kind of seeing all these characters in the film and these actors come together to kind of make something like this. Because yeah, I just remember watching it when I was a kid, and there was stuff about it that was goofy to me, but at the same time, like I just said, the whole thing with Cheryl in the basement and that character, that whole thing, like that just scared the shit out of me, dude.
It's
Very,
terrifying.
very creepy.
Yeah, that makes. So, Evil Dead the original is actually the first one that I watched. Because you had prefaced whenever you started talking about it, like you weren't sure if you saw one or two first.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Yeah, one is definitely the first one that I saw, and I loved it. It literally, I got a hold of that at a young age, around the time that I watched Saw 2, or not Saw 1 and 2. If you've been a
Yep.
long time listener, you know that story already. But it was around that time, and it was terrifying, and it definitely was corny and cheesy. But just like you said, the basement scenes, the way that they stretched a centimeter into a mile in this movie. It is a
Mhm.
practical effects just fest, and it's one of the best in its genre. It's one of
Yeah.
the best of its years. It's one of the best in a lot of categories. Do I find it to be a perfect movie? No, especially for how it evolves. I think it kind of it gets a little bit weaker for Evil Dead starting to find its identity, even if you judge it just on its own merits. Even if I kind of put my mind back into that time frame. But
Yeah.
again, like you had said, like the tree scene, which is done amazingly in here. Bruce, you gotta you gotta point out like the eyebrow stuff that he does in this one, man. Like the way that
Yeah, no, it's really
the
good.
corny, yeah, it's just
Yeah.
I love it, man. And that's where I said like it had some comedy elements, but it wasn't super funny. Like there's some parts
Yeah.
with the Deadites where it's like, okay, this isn't terrifying. You're going full rhymey right now. You're
Yeah,
giving me an
it's
idea of,
meant to be.
yeah.
Well, that's the thing too with the comedy elements, but there's even some stuff that kind of goes like again, it's like
Yeah.
production design and art direction and those elements that tend to take a back seat to the some of the other more pronounced visual stuff and the audible stuff. But like even coming down to the cabin, right?
Yeah.
Like, the first thing I remember saying when I was old enough to like remember like a conscious thought was like this fucking cabin is not safe. Like it's not
Yeah.
even secure. Like,
Yeah.
dude, what's so funny about the cabin? I mean, we can extend this to a discussion with the second movie as well.
Yeah.
I mean, so it applies to both movies, dude. Like the way that cabin looks in both of the first two films, like you could go up to that with a stick and poke it and it would fall over. Like it just
Yeah.
it
You could
just
huff
looks
and a
like
puff and it'll blow all down. Yeah.
And obviously that's intentional because it's like, this cabin is meant to make you as a viewer feel vulnerable, like the characters feel vulnerable because they are
Yeah.
in no way protected by the cabin. It is a dilapidated, like, at least on the outside,
With spit and glue.
yeah, dude, it's like the thing's like held together by fucking thumbtacks or something.
Yeah.
So
And
that's what I love
yeah.
about that though, and it's like that design, whether or not I'm pretty sure the cabin. I don't know if they built the cabin or if that was just there and that was an actual
I wanna
location.
say it was there because there was a problem with people vandalizing it. I could be getting
Yeah,
franchises
that
confused, but I
makes
wanna say
sense.
that's the case.
Yeah, that seems like it, but I mean that's the thing, dude. Like that's perfect. Like you can't get any better than that. Like a
Yeah.
cabin in the middle of the woods, and that's the thing. I mean that's why Evil Dead with that first movie, um, it just had a tremendous impact on horror filmmaking and just so many iconic images,
Yeah.
like the other great horror movies. It's very unique in that sense, with the characters and then the setting,
Yeah.
which I think is fantastic. So,
Would you say S or A rank?
dude, it's tough, man. I mean, I want to give it an S
Yeah.
based on just how prolific it is, but at the
Yeah.
same time, like looking at it
Realistically. Yeah.
realistically, looking at it technically, I would probably still give it an A.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. I actually
I think I
100
would
that's
give it an A.
exactly what I was thinking. That is exactly what I was thinking. And plus, the one thing that also I want to give a nod to is I think it had to have started the trend of segueing perfectly into sequels because
Mhm.
it segues perfectly into Evil Dead 2. Like
Yeah.
fucking perfect.
Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts on Evil Dead 2?
Well, so Evil Dead 2, here's the funny thing about Evil Dead 2. It's a sequel, but at the same time, it's a requel.
Yeah,
It is essentially a soft reboot
because of
of
rights,
the
right?
first movie. Yep, and, they had a little bit of a bigger budget to play around with, and that shows. Like, you can
Yeah,
tell, like, the effects
100%.
are they are
Crazy.
so much better in this movie. I think the comedy is much better in this movie. It still
Yeah.
has horror elements in there, of course. It's still bloody, it's still gory. I
Mhm.
think Evil Dead 2 is probably, I mean, we're only 20 minutes into this ranking video, but for me, Evil Dead 2 kind of takes the cake, dude. I think it's the pinnacle of the franchise for me personally.
Okay,
Um,
interesting.
I love it, dude. I
This
love
is
it.
where we get Chainsaw Hand.
What's that?
This is the one where we get Chainsaw Hand.
Yep. That's where we get Chainsaw Hand. But and dude, I just again the effects are stepped up in this one. I think the practical effects come across much better. They stand the test of time much better than the effects of the first film,
Yeah.
respectively.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, man. I mean, this movie is where I really like learned to like love Bruce Campbell.
Yeah.
Um,
More eyebrow raising in this one.
more eyebrow raising. Like you really start to see his personality kind of come
Yeah.
out in this movie, and that's what I love about this movie because I felt much more of a connection to Ash as a character
Agreed.
in this film than I did in the first film.
Because it's almost entirely just him pretty quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. And with the first film, like, he has that you see his personality come out in the first film, but it still feels not necessarily distant. Maybe
Yeah.
maybe you still feel somewhat disconnected from it. And I don't mean that in a bad way, because that might be intentional. But with the second film, it's just I just feel like his character is so much more relatable, at least to me.
Yeah.
Watching the second movie as opposed to the first. But yeah, what else can I say, man? I mean, I should have mentioned this with the first film too, but I mean, the atmosphere in this is just as well established.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic job establishing the tone and the atmosphere of the movie. I mean, just a fantastic movie. So many great gags, man, like practical
Mhm.
stuff with like the cutting the hand off and then he's like fighting the hand and like chasing it around the cabin, trying to find it. Like it just
Yeah.
dude, so many good gags, dude. Just
Yeah.
executed to perfection, you
I
know.
agree. It's
So
super well
that's
done.
yeah.
Yeah, it's actually interesting because I think I actually like this just as much as the first one. I know a
Okay.
lot of people, this is actually their favorite one out of all of them. And I
Mm,
100% respect that. It grows
yeah.
on me every single time I watch it.
Yeah.
I think it's the pinnacle. It's a toss up, and not to go into a different series, but it's
Yeah.
up there with Shaun of the Dead as a pinnacle of a horror comedy. I
Okay.
like Shaun of the Dead for different reasons, but
Yeah.
this right here actually has like a lot of horror, but not to
Yeah.
scare you. But I think
Yeah.
this is where we started getting a lot of like, this movie's not meant to scare you. This is horror in the sense of it's gory, you
Right.
know? And I think it really paved the way for other filmmakers to play around more with the genre rather than it
Yeah.
just being like kills, 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 blood, blood, blood. I think Sam Raimi was a pioneer. I mean, he's a pioneer in a lot of ways, but he really pioneered that, especially by segmenting it so much, especially with the budget and everything. The tree scene in this one towards the end, the great practical effects in that regard. The chainsaw scene, the way his face looks whenever he's doing all of that, it looks
So
great.
funny.
It's so funny, man. So would you say A but above Evil Dead or S? Because it sounds like S for you.
Yeah, dude, I gotta give it an S, man. I just think,
I respect that.
and again, I mean, I may be a bit biased because I feel like, so you mentioned rewatchability, and
Yeah.
I'm thinking about everything. I'm thinking about how well it's executed technically.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about visuals, how well it's shot. I'm thinking about lighting. I'm thinking about all that, the story.
Yeah.
Um, but also, again, one of the big things is rewatchability. I feel
Absolutely.
that this movie has a lot more rewatchability than the first film. And again, I
I
say
understand
that
that.
with
Yeah.
utmost respect. I love the first movie. I just think
Yeah.
two has a lot more rewatchability than one. So for me, yeah, I mean, I'm tempted to give it an S. I mean, if not an S, I would give it an A, but definitely put it above the first.
No, I can respect it for every reason that you're saying. It's just it grows on me more. And we'll get to my most rewatched one. The original two, I watch them often every October, but
Hmm.
I don't pop them in like I do another one on this list just for
Yeah.
fun. You know, there's one of my favorite horror movies is on this list of all time, and we haven't gotten to it yet. But yeah, I can definitely respect it being an S ring. Now I guess I'll open up with my thoughts on Army of Darkness because I feel a little bit differently. I found some people that kind of agree.
Mm,
It works. It's just so different. And
yeah.
again, I think it was a rights issue. They just consistently had issues whenever it came to the rights and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And for this one, that's why it's called Army of Darkness and why they just completely took it the other way was
Yeah.
because of rights and stuff. That's why there's like what, 4 different cuts: the Screwhead edition, the theatrical, the
Oh,
unrated, and
dude.
another
Yeah. There's
one.
at least two or three. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a ton of different editions. Now it's fun. Now this to me is the most fun Evil Dead movie out there in the
Mm.
purest, craziest way. You have mini ashes. This is another one where he fights a
Yeah.
hand, I want to say. From
Big
Evil Ash.
departure in setting and
Yeah.
style from the first two
Yeah.
films. Yeah.
Exactly. I just when it comes to this one, it's not that nothing doesn't work for me. It's just such a big shift, but I also can't really blame it for it because there's a huge shift between Evil Dead 1 and Evil Dead 2.
Mm,
So for Army of Darkness for me, while it does work, I don't find it as I find it to me personally be the least rewatchable out of anything on this
yeah.
list.
Okay.
Just because like I'm not a comedy guy. Like I like comedies, and this is one of the ones that's done really well. It's just I don't usually tune in for just comedies. I'm usually tuning into this one for Bruce Campbell, just because that's really what it is. It's not Army of Darkness, it's Army of Bruce Campbell to me. Yeah,
Yeah.
like it's just really well done. How do you feel about it?
Well, so Army of Darkness, I think, is the one that I've seen the most amount of times.
Oh wow,
Just because, yeah, I remember watching this as a kid, like with my dad, and I think it's one of those things that's funny. Like the first two are obviously, especially the first one. There's some very, I guess, not risque scenes in there, but again, like pretty disturbing stuff.
yeah,
And I think Army of Darkness is slightly more. It's just a slightly easier pill to swallow in
yeah,
that
yeah.
regard. Um,
It's a family movie to a degree, even.
dude, it really is. Like I said, dude, the action slash adventure
Hmm.
aspect is really prominent in this movie.
Yeah,
It's not for everybody. I understand it's not everybody's cup of tea. I personally really like it still. I think it's
yeah,
again, I like when directors or people that are in charge of a franchise decide, you know what, we're going to do this differently and do
For
it,
sure.
but also do it in a way that, I don't know, maintains the aura of the original. And we get that with Ash because everything else about the movie is pretty much changed, but Ash is the central thread
Yeah.
through these movies. So, you know, the fact that Ash is there and Bruce Campbell is there portraying him, I think maintains the consistency as far as the character's concerned. Um, but yeah, dude, for me, I mean, rewatchability, yeah, I could definitely watch this again.
Yeah.
So I think ultimately I'd probably give it a B.
Oh,
You know,
okay. I thought you were
B,
gonna go
B
A. I
plus.
agree. Yeah, that's exactly
No, I
where I'd
think
put it.
B. I think B because again, solid follow up. Definitely not on the level of the first or second, but
Yeah,
worthy enough to be, you know,
right where it's
third.
at. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. Um, Now, literally one of my favorite horror movies of all time. I fucking love Evil Dead 2013. I find it to be a perfect horror movie from beginning to the literal credits. Everything about this score, lighting, special effects, the freaking blood rain scene towards the end is absolutely
Insane.
bonkers. Like if you are fortunate enough or you've spent the money on the shout out, they have an amazing steelbook coming out for this one on 4K. But if you already have the Scream Factory 4K, that blood rain scene is one of the best looking modern scenes I've seen in 4K. It pops. And like we've
It's
said on
pretty
here
wild,
before,
man.
yeah, red pops the most in my opinion on
Mm,
HDR,
yeah.
other than black, which it works really well. So Evil Dead 2013 to like give homages, that beginning is absolutely crazy. That's a
Mm.
great way to start a fucking movie. The tree scene in this one, you
Oh, it's
already you
fucking
took
grotesque, dude.
yeah, you took something that
Just
was already
horrifying.
terrifying, horrifying, grotesque, like you just said, and
Yeah.
you ramped it up. Like this is one of those ones
Yeah,
I don't
dude.
really look at it as a remake, as I look at it as it's separate because Bruce has said that Bruce Campbell has said that they coexist in the same universe. I see this movie as an homage with Evil Dead qualities. But the gore, the blood, everything about it is just
Mm.
absolutely crazy. I love this movie. I rewatch it all the time, a few times a year, and that movie's terrifying. I dare
Yeah.
you to show this movie. If you had to show one horror movie to somebody that isn't The Exorcist, because that movie's aged to the point where modern audiences, while they might get scared from it, will just be like, "This is a corn fest." You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
If you want to show them, there's two movies I tell people to watch if you want to terrify a modern person that consumes movies: Evil Dead 2013 and Sinister. Now, there's
Mm.
definitely more terrifying I've seen out there, but this movie just takes it and just fucking runs with it. I forget her, Jane Levy. Jane Levy as
Jane
Mia,
Levy's amazing.
yeah, and when she turns Deadite is in freaking sane. And I also have to shout out that they throw you for a loop for who really is the main character quite often.
Yeah.
I adore that about that movie. That movie right there is an 11 out of 10. I fucking love that movie.
Wow.
Yeah. I have nothing but praise for that movie.
Yeah, you know what, dude? I'm gonna be honest. I really can't think of anything negative to say about it. Like,
Yeah.
and I've been thinking as you were talking, kind of thinking about, okay, well, where can I put this?
Yeah.
What don't I like about it? I mean, dude, I love the fact that they're using her. Like, it's about a recovering addict.
Yeah, yeah.
That's really, again, that's not something that we've seen in these films before. So I love that
Mhm.
they're taking the I guess we could say the setup or the premise that we're used to, specifically from the first two movies, reintroducing that to a newer generation, right? But kind of like really using it with I guess subject matter that is extremely relevant, was relevant at the time, and is probably even
Mhm.
more relevant today.
Yeah.
You know, not to get into it, but you know, we're dealing with a lot of issues in our society with addiction and
Yeah.
you know, drug use, and for them to kind of touch on that, I thought was really ballsy for a movie
Yeah.
that normally doesn't. Again, keep in mind, I mean, you know, there's a lot of stuff that's, I guess we can say, not necessarily as on the nose, but for them to kind of take something and use it to tackle an issue like that, I thought was really cool, and they worked it into the story perfectly. I thought it was a
They did.
perfect match for what they were trying to convey. So, yeah, I mean, in terms of writing and story and how they were able to do that's amazing. I really
Camera
like
work was
that.
great.
Again, a big risk and something that the franchise hasn't done before. Again, and that's the thing that
Yeah.
we're looking for here. It's very hard to do that. It's very hard to do that well, and it's hard to do it well a lot, right? It's hard to do it well consistently,
Mhm.
right? Especially when you have, again, it's a simple premise, but you got to find a way to reinvent that every time, right?
Right.
And that's another thing about these movies that are kind of cool. Like, although there is a continuous thread through some of them, they're pretty much each like soft reboots of the first movie, just in potentially different settings, right? That's
Almost
really what it is.
anthology-esque. You know what I mean?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, dude, I can't really say anything that you haven't said regarding the special effects or the practical
So
effects
good.
in this
The
movie.
knife
It is
scene, man,
really
in
incredibly
the
well done, dude.
dude, that knife scene in the basement, oh my god, it gets me every time. And then like the
Oh yeah.
chopper right there on the
Yeah,
arm. They're like she just turns around and she's
dude.
go bro,
It is.
it's crazy. Like
Yeah, she's just going for it, dude. Like, that's the thing, man. Like, it is just, like, brutal, dude. Like,
yeah,
it's just like, no,
it is
they don't
crazy.
even give you a second to think about whether or not she's actually I think there's, like, a one beat
Yeah.
where she's, like, getting ready to do it, and she just goes for it, dude. And
Goes
it's
for
just
it.
I just remember watching that like, "Holy shit, man. This is fucking brutal,"
Yeah. And the
for
crawl in the bathroom, man, with
oh, yeah. With the split tongue.
the doctor,
Or
the
no, not
nurse. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that was crazy, man. So much of this movie. I really do wish we had gotten another Jane Levy one. I'm okay with it being standalone. I don't need a sequel for everything. I'm so happy with it, but
Yeah.
I would never say no to another one. I never would.
Yeah,
Even a
I wouldn't
crossover.
either if she came back. I thought she was fantastic. I mean, really carried the movie. I mean, not so much in the beginning, but the
The acts, yeah. She goes
second and third
crazy.
act, I thought she did a fantastic job. And I mean, dude, what else can we say? That fight at the end with the Deadite and the chainsaw and the raining blood. I mean,
In the
that is
Jeep.
the cool in the Jeep.
Yeah.
It's just it's
The
like you
tear at the
can't
arm when she pulls
like
it
I
out.
yeah. Oh
That
yeah.
looked crazy. The special effects
That
for the
was
arm when she was ripping it. Oh
yeah.
man, it made my stomach squeam, man.
Yeah. That's the thing, dude. The first so, like, Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2, respectively, they had moments where it was, like, gross out, but it was cheesier, right?
Yeah,
It
yeah.
wasn't especially with the first film. In this movie, dude, it just makes you sick, man. Like,
Yeah.
my girl refuses to watch any of these movies.
Oh, yeah, you
She
told
will
me that.
not
I
do it. Like,
forgot.
if I pop it in, she's fucking leaving the room. She's going to do something else. She's like, "No, I'm done." Like,
Yeah. She's just
she
heard
didn't
a
wanna
lot
see it
about
with
him?
me. She didn't wanna see Evil Dead Rise in theaters, dude. She was like, "Nah,
Oh,
I'm not seeing that fucking movie." I was like, "Are you sure?" She's like, "Yeah." She's like, "I don't fuck with that."
yeah, fair enough,
Uh,
fair enough. And
but
these movies
so
have that reputation.
they do.
Yeah,
Yeah. What
you
so
bring
let me ask you this. What is your ranking? I wanna
it's the
hear your
best of the
ranking
best,
first for
man.
this one.
It's the best
Yeah,
of the best in my
because I
eyes,
was
like, it
gonna give
really
it an
is.
S.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Do you put it over Evil Dead 2 or after? Me personally, just for the
Ooh.
audience, I put it over Evil Dead 2. I
Yeah.
mean, I love all of the Evil Deads. It's just this movie just was terrifying when I saw it. Like, for a movie to make you feel the way this movie did, and for your jaw to drop whenever it's done and everything, it's crazy. I will settle for after Evil Dead 2 because Evil Dead 2 came first. But just for people that care about my personal ranking, it's definitely
Mm.
the best of the best to me.
Yeah, this is a very tough decision for me, man, because I love this movie. I think it's one of the best horror remakes of all time.
Agreed.
Just a shining example of how to do something right. And even again, it's even that right there is kind of weird statement because it is so hard not only to make a movie but to make it well
Yeah.
and people catch on to it. Um, as far as my ranking though. It's so hard, dude. Like,
I
there's
know.
part of me that wants to put it above 2, but at the same time, there is part of me that wants to put it like level with 2. Like, I think it's on
We can
par
say it's
with
tied.
2,
We can
to
say
be
that because they're
completely
products of
honest.
2 different generations. I
Right.
think
Well,
that's
that's what I
fair.
was getting to. Is these are movies that were made at completely different times. It's hard to really compare them in that regard. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Because some people might watch Evil Dead 2013 and maybe it's more up their alley than the second one
than
is,
something older.
right?
Yeah, because there are people that don't watch older movies. Shame on you if you don't, but
Yeah.
I respect your taste, but you're missing out on so much good stuff.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah, you know what, dude? I'm gonna put it. Um. I
You
mean,
say
dude,
tied?
I honestly want them to be tied.
Okay, we can call
Yeah.
that. I think
Yeah.
that's fair for an official from screen to shelf ranking. I like that.
I'm trying to think, like, dude, I'm trying to like back up all my points in my mind, like if I was convincing myself. And I
Yeah,
mean, dude, I love 2 so much, dude. I just think 2 is like the perfect blend of like what they 2 is like what they wanted to do with 1, but didn't have the budget to do it.
that's very fair. I can see
You know
that.
what I mean?
Yeah,
So
I can see that.
yeah, I'm gonna
Now the
keep it
fun one.
behind 2 for now, but they're essentially both interchangeable. I mean, 2013 is a fantastic movie, and if we haven't recommended it to people enough,
Go watch
you
it.
need to check it out.
And if you haven't seen it, you probably didn't get this far, but go watch it.
Yeah, exactly.
I think this is a perfect segue into I can never ever ever see if somebody wants to drop a comment below and let me know how to see who made these tiers so I can actually give them credit. But the person that made this tier list on Tier Maker added Ash versus Evil Dead, which I find to be a criminally underrated um, series from the 2010s. And I kind of wanted to preface that the 2010s was really like a pinnacle for horror TV. So we were getting American Horror Story was really reinvigorating that. This came out, I want to say around 2014, 15, maybe even 16. And then you start getting things like Scream, Love It or Hate It. It was a respectable series. But then you also started getting what's that one by Mike Flanagan that hit Netflix in like the late 2010s? Haunting
Oh,
of Hill House.
Haunting a Hill House, yeah. And I
Yeah.
think,
So
if I may, with Scream real
go for it.
quick, that kinda got better as it went on. I think
Season four
it
was
gained a
fun.
little more fans when they got the original mask back in the
Yeah.
later, I think it was like the 2nd or 3rd season. I never
Yeah.
watched the show, but from what I heard from people who did watch it, like, it did get better as it got
Yeah.
along. So that was good to hear.
Yeah, it definitely did. And for people that are mildly curious, the Scream TV series actually has one of probably my favorite kill in anything Scream in it. In like season 3, there's something like super graphic for MTV on there, and it was
Wow.
good. Yeah, I was like, holy cow, they did that. But
Yeah.
yeah, so back to Ash versus Evil Dead, criminally underrated. Only 3 seasons. It fell way short because it ends on not really a spoiler alert, but it ends on a insane cliffhanger, like one that just
Yeah.
really made you want just one last season, animated or live action. It still deserves one more season because it takes everything that is so good about all of the Evil Deads. It just is so good in every aspect. It opens up with him like banging a deadite, like in the first episode. Like it's
Yeah.
just super off the wall. It's the exact. It's like it takes Evil Dead 2 and some of the more grotesque moments of Evil Dead 2013 and just blends it so perfectly. And it takes even
Yeah.
some of the campiness from Army of Darkness, and I think it just gives you what is like perfection personified and what you would want. I couldn't desire anything more out
Yeah.
of Ash versus Evil Dead. It is so good. One more season in any way, shape, or form would have been absolutely amazing. I
Mm.
personally think that what failed this series was it was on Stars. Well,
Yeah.
like there are people that subscribe to Stars at the time that this was coming out. The only thing that was on there that was worth subscribing to was Power at the time, and it still has its spin-offs. And I think the main series ended for Power, but it
Mhm.
has like Ghost going on, and I think it has another prequel or spin-off series. But like, who was subscribing to Stars? You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like, it wasn't getting a lot of views, but it wasn't due to like a lack of demand, a lack of quality, or anything like that. I just think it was
Right.
failed because of the network that it was put on. And I'm sure it could have gotten picked up by another network or a streamer, but I'm pretty sure, correct me down below if I'm wrong or will correct me, but I'm pretty sure that Bruce, as season 3 was wrapping up and there was no renewal, they said that if Stars does not renew it, we will be canceling this and it will not continue anywhere else. Like, he was super adamant that this is my last time playing Ash. I'm getting old. I can't do it anymore. What's required of me. I'm pretty sure that was pretty much the scope that he was going down, but I genuinely, that's like a 9.5 out of 10, 10 out of 10, depending on the season. Little bit of dip in quality at the beginning of season 2, but season 1 was super fun. And then you have, what's it? Lucy Lawless, I want to say is her name, from Xena.
Yeah, Lucy Lawless from Xena, right?
Yeah, and she plays such a badass in this. And the supporting characters, Pablo and Kelly, are amazing. They were one of the main reasons I wanted more of it. And then season 3 gets crazier whenever you start introducing Ash's dad.
Oh, yeah.
And they start leaning heavy into the ashy slashy. It's just so fun.
Yeah.
The way that the town embraces it, everything. It's so good, man. How do you feel about it?
I like it a lot, dude. I think it was, I mean, so it's set 30 years, I think, 30 or so years after the events of the original trilogy. So 30 years after Army of Darkness. And pretty much it just kind of, it's just really Ash, like, carrying that survivor's guilt, so to speak, from the events of those first 3 films, and really at the same time avoiding responsibility or maturity to a degree, and kind of just taking accountability for his part in the whole thing, whether it's true or not. But as far as the show itself, I thought it was really good. I agree that it probably could have benefited from being, I guess we can say, backed by a larger entity or a larger media company. Because, I've never had Stars.
Yeah.
And I forget where I watched the show. I think I ended up watching it on streaming after the fact.
Yeah.
But yeah, as far as the lore, they get all that really well done. I mean, they tie it in very well with those original 3 films. The references to those movies are all present throughout. I think everything about the show is pretty solid, man. Like, the acting, the stunt work, the special effects are fantastic. Really enjoyable watch. And yeah, one of the first shows I was able to watch, at least at the time, in a long while, and actually I was into it. I didn't watch a few episodes and okay, not really for me.
Right.
It was pretty engaging. Kept me involved and kept my attention. So as far as my rating, I don't know, man. I don't want to rate this. It's not a film. It's a TV series. So
it's harder to rank.
I think I'm going to still give it a rating, but I'm going to give it a standalone rating simply as an Evil Dead TV series. I don't want to compare it to any of the films.
Yeah.
I will say, as far as, like I said earlier, tying in things with the original 3 films, they did that very well. Like, you felt that this was based in the Evil Dead universe. Like, this made sense, right?
Yeah.
And it felt authentic. It felt like it was part of that same world. And that's another thing that I love about this franchise that we can touch on, going into the next installment as well, is that the consistency with making you believe that all this takes place in the same world. That's the one thing about Evil Dead that a lot of other horror franchises haven't necessarily figured out. And I'll say, Scream is the exception. We talked about that already, but Evil Dead, the consistency between films is like second to none with this series, in terms of making you believe that this all takes place in the same world and the same universe. So they do a really good job of establishing that with this show and tying it into those first 3 films. So, for someone that's such a fan of those first 3 movies, it's kind of a treat. I mean, dude, it's pretty much everything that an Evil Dead fan could ask for with this series. So that's pretty much my thoughts on it, man. I mean, I kind of wish they had more seasons, but at the same time, I'm one of those people that thinks, you run a show for so long. Once you have so many seasons, it's like, how do you end it? It gets to a point where it gets harder and harder to end something the longer you go with it. So, it's a bummer that they didn't do any more than 3 seasons, but at the same time, like, I'll take what we can get, because the 3 seasons that we did get are really enjoyable. So that's pretty much where I stand. Did you want me to give my rating first, or did you want to go, Chase?
I just kind of wanted to say, and for those that may have not finished season 3, the next 30 seconds will be spoilers. The only reason that I wanted more is because the way it ended, because it ends Mad Max level.
It
Remember,
does. Yeah.
it shows him strapped up and almost damn near an interceptor in a wasteland.
Yeah, pretty
You
much.
know, so
Yeah.
that's the way it's
That's
like,
funny.
damn, like this would have been so cool. He could have been back in Kondak or whatever the case may be. But that's one of the biggest reasons I was like, one more episode, or even just a new movie, which we do have 2 movies in development. So for all we know, that could be the case, right? But yeah, go ahead and fire away your ranking.
So again, I want to let everybody know before I give the ranking, I am not comparing this to the movies.
Films. Yeah.
You know,
Standalone.
Chase is going to add it to our tier list here. But that's not to say that it is better or worse than any of the films, because again, I mean, dude, I'm somebody that I can't compare TV shows to movies. They're 2 completely different mediums. I mean, not necessarily, but in terms of time frame, like with a TV show, you have so much longer to tell a story. So the format's completely different. The structure's completely different. There's too many differences for me to be able to rate it, whether or not, you know, it's better than a movie or whatnot. So
yeah,
my rating, I'm going to give it an A.
I agree.
Not a perfect show by any means, but pretty damn good, dude. I mean, again, I don't think at this point or at the time there's anything more that anybody could ask for if you're an Evil Dead fan.
Yeah, I agree.
I think it pretty much delivered on every front for the most part. And again, it's not perfect, so I'm not going to give it an S. But I think it's pretty damn good, dude. So I'll give it an A.
Yeah, that's exactly where I stand. Mine's a little bit different. It's not. It has some really, really like bummer episodes. Not bad. Like I'd say the worst episode in any season is probably a 7 out of 10 at worst, because it's a lot of character development. The dialogue is really good. Everything that they say, the characters are really well done. And I think it's Bilal or Ball. That's one of the main villains. He's really, really good every time he pops up. It's just the way
can I
it
say one thing
ends.
too?
Yeah,
I want to say too, because we give a lot of credit to Bruce Campbell, like, and obviously, you know, I don't, whether or not it's true that he said that about coming back if someone else does it, or not coming back if Stars doesn't do it.
Yeah,
I mean, I can't speak to that, but I will say I would understand that, because again, like him saying he's getting older, like you know, despite everything, it's a very physical role. It really is. There's a lot of stunt work involved. There's a lot of choreography, especially with the fights with the Deadites and all that. I mean, he's doing a lot of stuff, and for him to still, you know, put his body through that, I mean, that's a lot to ask for somebody.
Yeah,
you know, and I mean, Bruce Campbell, I forget how old he is, but I mean, dude, I'm pretty sure he was born in the 50s, so
he's getting there.
He's getting like up 68. There, man, in age. He's like 68, almost 70, right? So, yeah, I can understand that entirely. But I do want to shout out real quick the rest of the cast. Excuse me. Kelly and what's the other guy's name? Pablo, I think.
Pablo
is the other clerk.
Yeah.
From Esmar, and of course, you know, Lucy Lawless is a badass in this. There's the other woman that plays like the police officer or the detective.
Yes.
She's really good. I forget her name, so correct me if you, or say it if you know it, or somebody leave a comment down below if you guys know who that is, who plays the I think her name's Amanda or something with an A, Ashley or Alyssa or something. I don't remember, but she is really good. The woman who plays Kelly is fantastic, and
she's
I
great.
love Pablo, man. Ray Santiago, I think, is the actor's name.
Yeah,
who plays,
Ray Santiago,
who plays Pablo,
and Dana De Lorenzo, and not Brandy, Amanda Fisher, Jill Marie Jones.
Okay,
and then Lee Majors, man, he's great. Lee Majors is great as
Lee Majors is the shit, dude.
As Ash's dad, he's amazing.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's what I mean, dude. Like the casting was whoever the casting director was for this, fantastic job. Excellent choices. It's great because again, you can see the relationships between the actors building over the course of the show as they do with the characters, and that's really cool to kind of see that, like, organic. It feels organic. You know what I mean? That's what I love about it. In that regard.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are pretty much my thoughts. I don't know if you have any other comments on Ash versus Evil Dead.
I just love even an animated like sequel. I'm totally fine with that. The world that they were about to give us, everything. I just had such a blast. And it's like I'm guilty of not supporting it while it was on Stars. I didn't have access to that at the time. I didn't actually watch it until the Groovy collection came out. That's how I watched it.
Which is an awesome collection, by the way.
Fantastic. I love it. Great design all the way through. So yeah, that'll pretty much summarize my thoughts for Ash versus Evil Dead. So that'll leave us to our most recent installments. And that's going to be Lee Cronin's The Second Stab by somebody that isn't Sam Raimi at directing an Evil Dead movie. This one is not a remake. Like what? And I mean, even then, Evil Dead 2013 is it. Bruce Campbell has said that it exists, in the same universe. So it's much more of an homage that recreates very vital Evil Dead moments. So this is the very, very first one that is just completely different, no existing characters, and it's known to be in the shared universe from the get-go, and it is completely different. Lee Cronin did a fantastic job at channeling Sam Raimi while also having his completely own identity. I remember I went and saw this. I want to say it released in Dolby because I remember the sound just being the sound design in this movie was just crazy. And the beginning's really good. I remember there being a little bit of slow parts during the discovery period because you have tapes in this one. And you decipher it, and it's actually the tapes that kind of manifest the Deadites to come in. And then the
audio, they play the tapes, the audio recordings, and that's kind of how that starts. And the tape,
mom
the voice on the tapes,
it's Bruce Campbell,
the
isn't
incantation.
Isn't it Bruce? Isn't that Bruce's cameo? Isn't he the voice on the tapes, like altered?
He might, I think that might have been him. Yeah.
I know he has like a voice cameo in this. But I did want to preface that the mom in this is one of the best horror performances so far this year that I've seen. Or like of the 2020s. She's amazing.
Yep, that is Alyssa Sutherland. She plays Ellie.
Yeah.
Who is the mother of the two children. Or the three kids, I should say. And she is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
Really convincing.
Terrifying. Yeah. Like
really
the side eyes that she gives and everything. I would even say that that's one of the most terrifying Deadites I've seen in any of them. And Mia is terrifying from 2013 whenever she gets possessed. So it's saying a lot. The reason that this movie, it's like I have said already multiple times, Evil Dead 2013, and not to compare them, just to kind of give you insight, Evil Dead 2013 is a genuinely terrifying movie. It really is. Some people might just see it as more grotesque or anything, but to the right people, that is a terrifying movie. More so out of any of these other installments. Evil Dead Rise made me feel actual dread for these characters that are in there. From like the daughters and the kids and everything, like, holy cow. I remember my heart racing in the theater for these people. It wasn't packed whenever I had went because it was like a super late showing. And I remember standing up around like getting into like the third act when they're about to go into the hallway. I stood up. I was like, I literally said out loud, "You're all fucked." Like, you spend all this time in of course, we've already said it multiple times. These are spoilers for this. If I'd probably say skip ahead for video viewers until you see us have the ranking on there.
Skip ahead. Spoiler warning coming up like momentarily.
After they have, they take care of the mom and they go into the hallway and all these other Deadites pop out. I literally was like, how the fuck do you get out of this? You just spent 80% of the movie fighting one. I literally was like, this is the first Evil Dead where there's no hope. There is no hope.
It's very hard to believe that they're going to get out of this.
Exactly. Up until that 80 percentile mark, I was like, oh, this is so good. This is this and this is that. And it's not that I despise the ending. It's just, again, I felt, and it is hard for me to feel that in a horror movie. And I usually don't like, it's like, horror. But the way they wrote that and the way they directed this made me feel like genuinely you are messed up, especially after that one scene. That part I don't want to go into for like triggering reasons. I don't want to go into too much detail, but with the child, one of the children and what happens to him, that was extremely graphic. So I figured we were in for more layers of that. But the ending was just one of the most video gamey endings of all time, man. Like, it was still good, but it just did not keep up with itself, and I just think it took a hard downhill turn. And it's not bad by any means. Again, the score, the performances in this, everything. Like, if it wasn't for that ending, I would even dare say that it'd be up there with Evil Dead 2013 for me, but I just can't because Evil Dead 2013 just gets better and better and better and better each second that passes. And again, I went into this with an open mind and wasn't expecting 2013, but I was getting that same everything in a different way, you know?
Right.
And it was just that ending. And I know we've talked about that part. How do you feel, Will?
Dude, I kind of have the same thoughts. I didn't care for the ending, but I'll talk about the positives first.
Yeah.
The opening title sequence in this movie is probably one of the coolest opening title sequences I've seen in a very long time.
Yeah. Really good.
The way that they did it when the girl's in the water and the title, or she's above the water as she's rising, we see the title rise behind her. That is incredibly well done, really creative. Again, something that's unique, something that we haven't seen. Not that we haven't seen it before necessarily, so to say, but just something that I haven't seen in a while, you know, and that from the get-go immediately sets the tone, which I thought was very well done. I think establishing the tone of this film right from the beginning, they did a perfect job with that. Could not have done it any better. I think, again, this is an Evil Dead movie. The kills are violent, they're brutal, they're disgusting. The blood and gore was top notch, although, you know, not as much blood and gore as 2013. I think 2013 still takes the cake as the bloodiest Evil Dead movie in the franchise. But this was a very close second. They got some, and the cool thing about this movie was they were really creative with some of the kills being in a different environment, right? Being in the apartment building. Like the whole thing with the cheese grater on the leg, like that was cool. I don't want to give too much away, but
I forgot
there
about
was some
that.
really unique, like practical gags in there that were really cool. And yeah, like you said, I mean, one of the kids gets it really bad, and that was unexpected as well, which again, like was shocking in a different way. Now, I want to point out, and I don't know if this is spoiler territory. We'll put a spoiler tag on this. So spoilers, everybody, you know, fast forward fucking 35, 40 seconds. But there was no violation in this film. It makes you think there's going to be one. There's the scene in the elevator where she gets trapped in the elevator. That's where I thought it was going. Which would have been fucking crazy. If they did do it, but they didn't go there.
I thought that's where it was going to end.
I thought they were going there. They didn't go there. Which is fine, you know, because that would have been uncomfortable to watch anyway.
Exactly.
But I didn't expect them to, and that's what I thought when I watched the trailers, right? I had a question of whether or not I was like, oh, damn, there's kids in this movie. Like, how are they going to play this? Because either they're going to play it safe,
or
which is what I think a lot of people are expecting them to do, or they're going to go there and have the balls to fucking, you know, like kill a child or possess a child. And let's just say that the movie did not disappoint, folks. Still very shocking. But, you know, I also want to point out, you pointed out the mother.
So good.
Who is, again, Alyssa Sutherland is her name. Fantastic actress. I think Beth was great, who I think is Lily Sullivan. The sister of the mother, like the aunt to the children. But out of the kids, I got to say the blonde girl was fantastic. She was such a great, like, just really funny. Like, she just had that persona on screen, you know, like she had like a glow to her, you know. I just think she was awesome in the movie. Like the whole thing with the doll on the stick, like the doll head on the stick or whatever it is that she's got there. Like, I thought that was cute. Like, you know, she came across as cute, but at the same time, I forget Nell Fisher. She plays Cassie.
That's exactly what I was looking up.
You know, so shout out to her. Awesome job, you know, for being in a movie this violent, this gory, you know, this horrifying. Like, I mean, all the kids were troopers, you know.
They were.
But to have to deal with all that, and especially imagining all that practical blood that you got to be doused in, you know, every day on set. I can imagine, it takes a lot to have to deal with that for hours and hours and hours at a time. So you can only imagine, what it was like physically for everybody, especially dealing with, blood and whatever other, what do you want to call it? Deadite blood, whatever that is, like, just all different types of fluids. But yeah, dude, I think the Deadites in this were brutal. There were some really cool gags, like the whole eyeball gag in the hallway. That was cool. A lot of fun practical effects stuff in there. So, I mean, there's something in there for everybody. But yeah, dude, the ending to get to that is the one thing, not even necessarily the ending, but just again, that the final boss, so to speak. Let's put it that way, because that's what it reminded me of. I was like, what is this? This is a fucking final boss. Like, what is this bullshit?
We're about to beat the game. Yeah.
And dude, and maybe we can use that as a segue into our ratings, because this would have been, I'm like, this came pretty close to being S tier for me.
I agree. I literally agree, man.
And whatever that fucking thing was at the end that they had to fight, that brought it from an S tier to probably like a B plus or an A. I mean, you know what? I can probably still give it an A. Yeah. Because I am forgiving, and I think the rest of the movie is a fucking banger.
So good. Yeah.
So I'm going to give it an A.
I agree, because I can forgive it as much as it made me go, like, at the end, I was like, what the fuck? We get the meatball Deadite is what I've been calling it since I saw it. Because
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, but yeah, I definitely don't think it's as good, because I think Evil Dead 1 is good from start to finish. Yep. While I do find things about Evil Dead Rise better in some aspects, again, two different, like what we have for S rank, right? For Evil Dead 2 and Evil Dead 2013, they're products of two different generations, and they're both great in their own right. Same thing can be said about Evil Dead 1 and Evil Dead Rise, but Evil Dead 1 ends on a much better way, in a way that is very Evil Dead and set the tone for the universe. While I respect Evil Dead Rise for being so different, I just, there should have been somebody that was like, hey, 80% of this movie is terrifying. Like, it actually causes you to feel fear and dread for these characters. What the fuck are we doing with this spaghetti meatball monster? And now I will say, the way that she fights at the end, that was cool, and there's even a part, I don't know if you picked it up, where she kind of has like that Ash Williams unibrow a little bit. With like just the way the blood and everything, she looks very Bruce Campbell-ish, and it was cool.
I didn't have a problem with anything else about that.
Yeah,
like Lily Sullivan's character, like Beth, the way Beth had to fight it at the end, like that was, I didn't have a problem with any of that. That was cool. Like, she was a fucking badass, dude.
Yeah, agreed.
Cassie, what's her name? Nell Fisher or whatever. I just had her name. Yeah, Nell Fisher's character. They were both awesome. I'm glad that they both made it out alive.
Yeah.
I didn't have a problem with anything else, dude. It was just the fucking monster. Like, that's just not like Evil Dead to me.
Yeah.
That's it. And I know that there are a lot of other people out there that share that sentiment. Now, if you're somebody that thought that was cool and you're in it, like, okay, that's fine too. Like, you can appreciate that. Like, I respect them for kind of taking a chance and rolling the die and like, hey, let's try something new and see what happens. It just didn't work for me. That's all.
Yeah.
It just didn't. It didn't. Everything else about this movie fit perfectly in the universe of Evil Dead, except for that.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
and I definitely give it, like I said, a tip of the hat for trying to be different. Yeah. I just don't think I've met somebody that thinks that it worked. You know what I mean? Like, that very last 20%. That's the one complaint about this movie. Now, I've met people that just didn't like it in general, which I respect everybody's opinions. I just don't see how. I think it's an amazing, like, horror thriller that makes you feel something. Like, and that's why I find it so special. It made my heart palpitate, man. Like, it takes a lot for that to happen. Anything that makes me feel something other than just experiencing a movie, but if you can actually inflict an emotion on me by watching something, you've done a great job.
Yeah.
So if I'm feeling like, man, you're fucked, my heart's racing for you, I feel like I'm fighting these people. Like,
right? Exactly.
That's special. That's I can't say enough that, like, the first 80% of it, I damn near, like I said, probably would have even found it to be just as good as Evil Dead 2013 and 2. if it just wasn't for the way that it ends. But
And,
it's
and
phenomenal in
again,
its own right.
and we talked about it already, but I want to just point out again, it also, you know, what really helps this movie is that the protagonists are, for the most part, I mean, Beth is somewhat of a relatable character.
Mm-hmm.
I actually felt worse for Ellie's character, Alyssa Sutherland, you know,
Yeah.
like, I don't know, to have to lose her kids, you know, and for her kids to lose their mother. I mean, that's a very sensitive subject for a lot of people. It's just really sad, you know, but it's horrifying at the same time. But, you know, her performance is so fucking convincing, dude. Like, it really, like, dude, I'm getting chills just talking about it because I remember being in the theater, like, dude, this is fucking, she is doing a damn good job, like, selling this. Like, this is really well done. Like, she just became somebody else, you know.
Yeah. She snapped.
Talk about being possessed, you know. It just, she really sold it, dude. Like, really fantastic performance. Honestly, it's always great when you have I guess we can say a leading antagonist that is like really convincing, because I just think that makes, like you were saying, like that's why you get so involved or so engaged in a movie, because you feel like it's life and death, you know. And the characters and the actors, to a larger degree, you know, they're responsible for selling that to an audience, you know. And she did a fantastic job. So
I agree.
but yeah, man, other than the ending, I think it's a fucking top tier movie, you know, very solid entry all around. So yeah, I would stick with that A.
Yeah.
For a rating.
And for people that are on audio, I'm sure we're going to talk a little bit, if Will wants to, a little bit more about Evil Dead. But just to reiterate for our audio listeners that may have followed along, or just you want a reminder, for S, in no order, but they're both, again, like we had just said, they're both different products at different times that fit different flavor profiles. They're both S rank, and that's going to be Evil Dead 2 and Evil Dead 2013. And then for A, we have, actually, let me fix that real quick for the video. So we have Evil Dead, the original one, and then Evil Dead Rise in that order. And then in its own right, as a TV series, we have Ash versus Evil Dead. And then in B, which is still awesome, this isn't to say it's the worst one or anything like that, it's still a phenomenal movie, we have Army of Darkness. So that's what we've got going on for that.
Hell yeah.
Any other thoughts about Evil Dead, the upcoming releases, or anything else you want to talk about?
I'm excited that they're going to make some more installments. I mean, I think this is still it's a franchise that can go to a lot of different places with the lore that they have. I think they've done an incredible job of maintaining the lore of the franchise and handling it they've done a good job handling it. I think they've presented it well in every installment. Again, the one, if I may, for, you know, this, we've mentioned it a few times now, but just to reiterate, I think the one slip or the one fumble they had was with that final monster at the end of Evil Dead Rise. Other than that, everything in these films and the TV series has been pretty on point, you know, pretty consistent.
Yeah.
So I really don't have any other complaints. I actually have, I got the Evil Dead game for PS5. And I have not played it yet, but when we were talking about it, I just noticed it over on my shelf. Yeah.
I loved that game. I played it so much when it came out.
Yeah. So I don't know. You kind of got me in that mood. Maybe after I get dinner, I'll come back and pop that in, play a little bit of that, you know?
Yeah. It's super fun,
Evil Dead mood. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, dude, I hope the next movie, I hope they take cues from Evil Dead Rise in regards to what people responded to positively and what they didn't like.
Yeah.
So we'll see what they do moving forward. I mean, as long as Raimi and Campbell are involved, I think things will remain pretty consistent. You know, I have faith because, I mean, let's just be honest, their track record so far is pretty good, dude. So
good at picking the people he wants.
Yeah. So if they are, in fact, and I wasn't aware that they're making 2 more installments. That's
I actually have the info here, because I think I told you about one of them yesterday, because one of the better Shudder exclusives that's out there, or originals, is something called Infested. It's a French film.
Yeah, we talked about that. Yeah.
And that is by Sebastian Vanicek. And that's Infested, exclusive to Shudder. He was handpicked, or he went to Raimi and team and submitted a script for an idea. which, if you can tell, that's essentially how Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell, I think we might have touched on this a little bit, is how they're handling Evil Dead now. Sam Raimi, he was busy. He's got a lot of things going on with Marvel as the rumor loop and stuff, and doing his own things, right? So Sam Raimi is letting up-and-coming horror artists use a familiar IP, and he will give them approval after reading the script. And so that's how it's working for Sebastian Vanecek. And there's another guy by the name of Galuppi, and he has, or Francis Galuppi. His movie actually just came out. It was by Ghost House Pictures. It's called The Last Stop in Yuma County, which I haven't heard of, but I definitely want to go check it out. It's got Matt O'Neill, Adif Malik, and or that's produced by, but Jim Cummings, Sarah McCormick, Nicholas Logan. Really don't know a lot of them, but it looks interesting. It doesn't seem like they really have a horror background from what I can tell. But I really like that approach, you know, because there's so much, like what we've said and we prefaced at the very beginning of this episode, there's so much you can do with the concept of it while keeping it fresh and constantly introducing it to a new generation. That's why this series has stood the test of time. From people that grew up with the originals to people that are growing up with Evil Dead Rise might have been their first one, you know? Because I know Evil Dead 2013 introduced and scared the shit out of a whole new generation. And that's why they are Evil Dead fans now. It's a beloved movie. I couldn't name one out of any of them that people will probably say they hated it. I know Rise had its people that it didn't like, but they all are out there, right? But I like that approach. I think that's wonderful. Have two different ideas, stagger it in, keep Evil Dead fresh. Let people get a hold of it. Let people do what they want with it. And that's really cool and respectable, because I don't recall another time where that's been like that, where like you can go to the creator and you hold the rights and you pretty much just give them your blessing to go do it. That's cool. I really respect that.
Yeah.
And then Infested, check that out, because that's a really good movie.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to watch that. I mean, it's been a while since I've watched. And we were talking about it before we recorded yesterday, or I should say this video. But yeah, it's been a while since I've seen like an insect horror movie, like insect infestation, you know, horror film. So that should be interesting.
Yeah,
but it looks creepy, man. Trailer looks good, but
yeah,
guys, that was our Evil Dead franchise ranking. We hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let us know in the comments down below what you guys think, what your ranking is. You know, what film's your favorite, what film's your least favorite, what do you guys think about the TV show from Stars, and all that goodness. So thanks again for watching. We will see you guys on the flip side. And as always, if you're interested in any of the other content we have available, like, subscribe, check it out. We got a backlog at this point of content that's available. We pretty much talk about everything: physical media related, theatrical releases, entertainment, pop culture, all that good stuff. So check it out. Check out our other videos, and we will see you guys soon. Chase, closing thoughts?
Nope, that'll be it. Thank you guys for tuning in. Evil Dead's something very near and dear to me, one of my favorite things out there in this world. So thank you guys for tuning in to our Evil Dead episode. Stoked we did it.
Conda. Estrada. I don't even fucking remember what they say. I don't know. Dude, it's like different in every movie slightly.
Yeah.